going to hand over to Leonardo. So, yes, just a quick introduction of Leonardo. Leo, you can come. We were working on this PDC places, and means our friend Andy and Ram, they were pushing us. They are the chair for PDC places for this year. They were pushing us, you should have a PDC place in Malaysia. And then we said, okay, we agree. We didn't thought about it, anything. We were thinking 15 people's meeting. And suddenly we got a message from Leo, an email, that, oh, I want to come to Malaysia. No, I want to be part of the PD places. And me and Gary was thinking, okay, Leo will be talking online. But he said, no, I want to come. And we were looking on the map all the way from Colombia, how it's going to reach here. So Leo was then, that gave us an impression, okay, if Leo can come, then let's talk about it. Rob came in, and then Liz said, okay, can I come in July? I said, can you push it a little more to August? And then all of you, it somehow, the snowball started with the Liu email that we were thinking about it. So Liu is a professor in the University of Columbia. For me, it's very bad. I couldn't pronounce the full names. He will introduce himself. His PhD is from QUT, that I know. And the best thing is actually, which we are really looking at forward and see his presentation, that he is so much in actions and movement, which fascinate me. So let's see what he's going to present. Leo, over to you. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. It's going to be hard. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Okay. It's going to be hard to make a contribution to what's already being discussed, but we'll see. I'll try. So the original title of the talk was this: Participation Design, otherwise in More Than Human Entanglements. And I find it really interesting that you brought up pluriversal design, because this was a notion that was developed and conceived basically by a Colombian anthropologist, Arturo Escobar. And it's interesting that he's an anthropologist, right? And he saw the way. So we'll see what happens. So, salamat pagi, good morning, buenos dias. And I have realized that that's all I can say. And I'm really sorry that I cannot speak the many languages that exist in this room. But sometime, maybe one day in the future, in a different life, I will be able to connect with you through the nuance of your own language. For now, Spanish and English would have to do. So there's this beautiful thing in Australia called Acknowledgement of Country. And because I do not speak any of the local languages, and because the Spanish did a pretty good job of wiping out the local languages from Colombia, the only language that I feel that I can use to acknowledge country is Spanish, because it is my native tongue. So I'm going to read this for you. Reconozco la soberanía de los pueblos ancestrales de este lugar y doy mis respetos a sus antepasados y a sus mayores. This gets really emotional. Mis respetos se extienden a custodios tradicionales de las tierras, aguas, animales, bosques y cielos en los que esta conversación tiene lugar. Agradezco su sabiduría y lo que nos puedan enseñar para construir futuros compartidos. The rough translation of this would be, I acknowledge the elder people of this land, and I give my respect to the elders. My respects are extended to the traditional custodians of the land, the water, the animals, the forests, the heavens in which this conversation is taking place. I thank them for the wisdom and whatever they can teach us to build shared futures. I'm really humbled by this invitation, and I would like to thank Professor Tariq, Gary, the team, the student volunteers, the university, Malaysia, and all the different states. It was really interesting to come to Sarawak and find out that I had to go through customs and then see the Malaysian flag next to the Sarawak flag. Yeah, I've been reading about you lot a bit, trying to understand the nuance. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to actually pick it up in detail, but I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been asking a lot of questions. And I would, of course, like to thank every last one of you for being here, for traveling from different places, for putting these together, and yeah, my love to you. So this is me, Leonardo Parragudelo. You can call me Leo. We use two surnames in Colombia. Parra is after my dad and Agudelo is after my mom. But because English standards suck in terms of publications, I have to use a dash in the middle. Because, yeah, English speaking people get crazy when they have two words separated. So I studied, my background is industrial design. Never did anything in industrial design really, because Colombia didn't have an industry for that. And then I did an MFA in design and technology at this funky school called Parsons School of Design in New York. And then I did a PhD in social transformation at the Urban Informatics Lab at QUT under Marcus Forth and Jas Choi and a bunch of other people. But the question I'm asking here is that who I am? Probably not. Probably not. Those are just things that I've done. You know, oh, here's an interesting academic. Whatever. Maybe I'm not interesting. So I'm going to share a couple of things with you. Back in the day, I used to do a lot of graffiti in Colombia. And then when I moved to Australia, I started doing street art, which was easier to sort of negotiate and navigate because, and I was in Queensland, right? So if you get caught doing graffiti in Queensland, you get up to 7 years of jail. And I was an international student. I didn't want to go to jail. I didn't want to get deported, right? It makes sense. This is really interesting. Back then, you would get a bigger sentence for doing graffiti than for rape. I don't know what that means for Australia, but I didn't get caught, which is good, right? I managed to finish the PhD. I also do competitive BMX. I'm happiest when I'm covered in mud, as you can see. And that's why I'm really looking forward to going to Long Lamai. So if we get stuck in the mud, I'm going to help. I am someone that's not afraid of being the silly one, right? I'm not afraid of that. But you wouldn't think that I am a shy person. I really have to push myself to do all these things and engage people and ask questions. And I guess asking questions and trying to find out about what's going on with people is a coping mechanism, but it's also really interesting to engage others. So that's me at a motorcycle event wearing a custom-made gorilla mask that I had someone make for me because I thought it was funny. And you wouldn't know, but if I didn't tell you, that I'm also exploring stand-up comedy, and that's me at an open mic in Colombia, right? It's really hard, and there's a few things that I would like to say about stand-up comedy, but I don't know if I have the time. So let's keep moving forward. it's hard to stand on a stage and drop a joke and then silence. It's really bad, right? And this, okay, so I'm going to talk about stand-up comedy a little bit. When you stand up on a stage and you are working in the stage arts, at least in Colombia, people wish you shit, right? I wish you shit as a comedian. And that comes back from what used to happen in theaters back in the day. You know, like people would rock up in their horse and carriages and whatnot. And so if you had a full theater, the street would be full of shit. So wishing people shit is wishing people good luck, which is strange. Anyway, stand-up comedy, it's a funny thing. And you wouldn't know by talking to me randomly about the other things that I do. I make music. I have an experimental electronic music band, and I really hate reggaeton, you know? Hate it. The lyrics are really bad, and the core of it is, in terms of what they say, it doesn't resonate with me. But the sounds, they're really special. You can actually track the sounds to traditional music in the Caribbean, the traditional music that came from Africa with the slaves, the traditional music that emerged in indigenous communities in the region. So now I am making what I like to call abstract reggaeton. Here's a sample. Boom. So you can, I don't know if you can pick that up, but there was a guy saying candela. That's a really important word, which means fire. And it's used in a traditional type of music called cumbia, which was sort of put together in Colombia. Mexicans would say that it's Mexican, but they're lying. They don't know what they're talking about. They've done other things. And it's funny because this little machine that's there was actually designed in Mexico by Chileans. Anyway, I don't know if that makes sense or is relevant, but a little story, right? So I was invited here to talk about participatory design. And then on my way here, I was reading this book called Think Like a Freak. It is not academic, but it's interesting. And the authors have written a couple of other things because I'm really interested in economics. I know nothing about them, but I find economics really like weird. And there's something that they say that I found really interesting. And it is, you know, the hardest words to say in English and maybe in other languages are, I don't know. I don't know, right? Did I travel all the way to Malaysia to talk about something that I don't know anything about? I know a couple of things about PD, but truly, I don't know. Truly, I don't know. Sorry. And I volunteered some information about me, right? Now you know me a little better. You know I like the mud. You know I like cumbia. You know I like the beats of reggaeton. You know I like, you know me a little bit better. But I really don't know who you are. Like I had a brief chat with you, some of you, but not at great lengths, right? So I know nothing about your local languages. I know nothing about your culture, your personal or collective beliefs, your everyday life, your favorite food, your favorite band, or music or singer. I don't know about your interests. So there's a little activity that we're going to do. Maybe we'll use that or maybe not. So I have a couple of printouts that Gary printed for me. Thank you for all that and for answering to all my last minute requests. I know you hate me now, but I love you. So can I see that for a second? Thank you. So there's 6 columns, right? I would ask you, if you want, to write your full name in whatever language you want to write it. I would ask you to write your favorite words in your local language, and I'm interested in knowing what that means. I would like you to write your favorite food, your favorite music or band or whatever, and then I would like to have your signature. And it doesn't matter if they get messy or whatever. I'll make sure to frame this and hang it in my house when I go back to Colombia, and I will send evidence, and then Gary and Tariq might share it with you, but I will treasure this all my life. I also brought from Colombia traditional lollies. So I would ask you to grab just one from each, just one. So it's either this or this, right? These lollies are traditional, made out of milk and other things. So if you're lactose intolerant, I would recommend this. They're not vegan, but they are vegetarian. And these sweets are made out of these really beautiful fruit from southern part of Latin America called feijoa. Some people would say it in English something like feijoa, or maybe that's Portuguese. I don't know. Who cares? So fruit and milk. And this is how I would invite you to connect via your digestive system to my country. So fill up the forms, please, and just grab one so everyone can have a go and try what Colombia tastes like. Thank you. So I was watching the movie Talking the other day, and there's a really interesting scene in which he brings the kids to the forest to have them talk to trees, and he tells them, just talk to trees, right? And one of the kids goes and looks at a tree and says, "What's your name?" And I thought that was beautiful, right? I thought that was beautiful. That's why you have the forms, right? I'm asking for your names. I want to know your names. I might not be able to pronounce them because I only speak Spanish and English. Maybe you'll have an opportunity to teach me. So I'm also going to be around. You can just rock up and be like, "Hey, this is how you pronounce my name, bitch." And I'm like, "All right, thanks." Again, I'm really informal, but this is what I'm trying to give you is my full self, right? And this is something that I've learned in stand-up comedy. In order to connect, the way I've managed to connect was to be myself. So now you're getting the full Leonardo experience. And with that, I would like to say that by being here, I see you, and I hope you see me. And I also hope you see others. This is a little exercise about acknowledging and connecting. And I could finish the talk with that because that was my main point. Anyway, so I see you. And to quote the Beastie Boys, now here's a little story I've got to tell you from a song that they released in 1986. We've done a lot of things in Colombia, but we've been working in this volcanic area for 5 years, and this is the Silence Lagoon, and that's the Doña Juana volcano, and the locals call the volcano Mother Juana. It's beautiful. It's called the Silence Lagoon because people say that if you go to the lagoon and you make a racket, you make a lot of noise, the mountain would get angry and would send rain and clouds. And look, gives me goosebumps. I've seen it happen. I've seen people going up to the mountain be loud, and then I've seen the clouds coming down from the volcano to cover everything up. I don't know what that means because I don't have the traditional tools to understand this. But I've seen it happen. How could we connect meaningfully with the mountain is a big question for us. So the work that we do in that volcano is supported by this notion of vital environments that was defined by Tim Ingold a few years back, but he published a book in 2021, which I haven't read, but I will, and he should read it too, or his work, or at least look it up, or maybe don't look it up. It's up to you. But this is our spinal cord, right? Because through that notion, we are trying to understand how ecosystems, geosystems, social systems, and cultural systems are entangled together, right? How they relate to each other. This is the team, and it's got we have different backgrounds, clearly. We have Natalia up there. She's a volcanologist. We have Nancy. She's part of the Faculty of Education. We have Richie, who's now doing a PhD in Australia. He was our guy to work with remote sensors, so he was the drone guy, and yeah, fun stuff. There's Monica, who's an anthropologist. We have Catalina, who is environmental engineering, but she's really interested in biology, specifically in paleoecology. So she would be able to tell you how an environment was 20 million years ago by just looking at biological markers. We have, and this is a tough one, Miguel. He's a civil engineer, and he moved to TU Delft a couple of weeks back, so we're gonna miss him a lot. We have Susie, who is a geologist, and we have Sonia, who is an archaeologist. I'm part of the team. I didn't list myself. And I am the designer of the team, right? And I was called to work for this team as a sort of translator. How do we bring all this, all that knowledge, technical knowledge, bring it to the ground and communicate it to people? And I thought, well, that's pretty shitty approach. It's very patronizing. We have this big, massive block of knowledge, and we're gonna tell you, the person that lives in the volcano, what the volcano means. I was like, well, that's not, I'm more in line with the, pluriversal approach. So I was more interested in how could we connect. So that's why we started looking at the problem from a different perspective, right? So I showed you the team that works at my university, Universidad de los Andes, right? But then, after a few iterations, we realized that the team was not that. The team also had to include other entities, more than human entities, and also human entities, right? So we have the rocks, and they tell us the stories of the volcano and the mountains. We have the soil, and the soil tells us the stories of the land from a chemistry or chemical approach, but also many other things. If you look at archaeology from that point of view, you get the paleoecology blending with the archaeology, also with the volcanology, and then you also get all the social knowledge about the soil and what to do with it and what it means, and etc., etc. But we also have the locals that my work, like Leo, his name is Leonardo as well, who worked for the National Park institution, So the Doña Juana volcano is part of a big park that integrates 3 massive volcanoes, really dangerous, really explosive, which were only discovered about 15 years ago. So people didn't really know that they were volcanoes because, we like our guerrillas, right? And we like our internal conflict. So that's what happened because of everything that happened in political terms. People living in the countryside didn't get the land. The government didn't support rural areas and was really oppressive. And so people decided that they had to emancipate themselves. And that's the story of Colombian guerrillas, right? And then they got corrupted and everything that was bad happened. But at the beginning, they had a really interesting view. I think it was wrong to pick up the guns to sort of try and sort out the problem. But the motivation, I think, is legitimate. Anyway, going back to our team. So the mountains, the flowers, the orchids. You wouldn't believe how amazing it is to get out of the 4x4 car, step out of it, and just see one orchid and another one and another one and another one. And you would see like really tiny ones all the way up to big ones, right? It's crazy. You're like, what is this? And you see them everywhere. And this is really interesting for volcanoes, right? Because no one really understands what happens. They will tell you, people will tell you, oh, look, the soil is really good for growing crops after an eruption. Sure. After many years, not immediately after the eruption, because it would be really acid. So nothing would be able to grow, right? So Catalina is really looking at how plants transform the soil and make it good for other plants. And of course, we also have the driver, Manuelito, who's on the left of that picture. We have wonderful master students from different backgrounds. So for example, those two, the one in the middle and the one on the right, the one on the right was, Diana was looking at the anthropological things that the anthropology team was interested in. And the one in the middle was looking at geological stuff. And that's why that hand is there. right? We're really trying to understand how to connect with all those beautiful team members that we stumbled upon while trying to understand what was happening in the volcano. So with the team, we've explored how to listen, how to learn from each other, how to work together. When people say, oh, this is a transdisciplinary problem, you can sort it out this way. Yeah, it's not that easy, right? You get different perspectives, different approaches, and then it's really hard. But we've tried. We have really tried. We have tried to engage knowledges otherwise, and this is a really interesting critique of, there's a few Colombian academics that talk about this, right? So you have the technical academic knowledge, which in Spanish we call conocimiento, and that's the like technical words, right? And then you have local knowledges. I don't think English has a word for that, or maybe I don't know it, but we have this, we distinguish local knowledges from academic knowledges, and we call them saberes, right? So saber is to know, whereas conocimiento is knowledge. But you could also say conocer, which would be a verb, but then that means to meet. Spanish is weird. So you see, there's a lot of nuance in language and how you engage things. We've tried to integrate through engagement those knowledges otherwise, because we think they are at the same level. You know, our partners and plants might not have done a PhD, but their knowledge of the land is as valuable and important and relevant as the knowledge that we bring to the fore and, you know, to the table to sort of work on it. And we've tried to leverage collective intelligence, which is like this notion of collective intelligence was developed by or explored mainly by Shula, who is a really interesting person. If you work on the network space, he's published a number of things. He's interested in artificial intelligence and whatnot. But then at some point he realized that yes, sure, we can do all these things, right? But then you can have the infrastructure, but if you don't have the knowledge to use it, then what is it useful for, right? So we've tried to sort of leverage that collective intelligence as a team to do things. And we've done a bunch of things. As I told you at the beginning, I used to do a lot of graffiti and street art. And I have found that the visual is a really powerful gateway to connect with people. So this mural here was done by engaging some of the community members. We wanted to know what was relevant for them. And they said that wildlife was super important, right? So there's 15 mega diverse countries in the world. Malaysia is one of them. Colombia is another one. So what you see here are the animals that they said were really important. So this is a chucha. It's like sort of this sort of size kind of rodent. That's a bear. We have a high mountain bear. Oso de anteojos. How do I translate this? It's a bear that looks like has glasses, right? It's all black and then whoop, a white thing. And then we have that. It is the paletón dorado, which is a particular kind of toucan, high mountain toucan. We have the armadillo there, and we have this really weird animal called danta. And this is the silence lagoon, right? These are the orchids, which are really important for the people as well. And that's the volcano. You know, and the volcano is the heart of the mountain. It is the heart of the people. And there's a few features that I could talk about, but they're not that important at the moment. After that, after this mural, we were accepted. You know, we were welcomed. Because before this mural, and this is really interesting because Colombia has a huge petrol industry, right? And the people in that area thought that we, being academics and working with volcanologists and geologists, were just going to go and look for oil and extract that and sell it and leave nothing in the community. So we had to be really upfront about what we wanted, what we could do, what we were going to do, and how we were going to do it. So this was a way to say, we see you, right? We see you. Please see us. We're not here to extract. We're here to grow with you. We're here to live in this beautiful environment. And of course, there's the rainbow. If you go there, it's always going to be a rainbow, right? I think there's one up there. Yeah, beautiful. So this was the gateway. And that was, I think that this was done in 2017. And what was really interesting is that later on, a few months later after this was painted, I found out that a little kid, she was 8 years old at the time, she had declared herself as the guardian of the mural, right? So she would get out of school and would go and sit down and make sure that no one would do anything to it. And I thought that was amazing. And there's another thing that's interesting about that. In that state, Nariño, there's a festival. And in that festival, there's an activity, they call it Black Hands. And so people will paint their hands and just rub everyone's bodies. And I've been there and I was just like a big mess. And I'm like, oh, hello, professor. It was amazing. And the whole town, all the walls of all the houses in the little town would have hand marks. The 2 murals that we did then remain untouched. So this was at least my gateway to connect. But we've done many other things. So that bit up there, we've been working with 3D printouts to try and understand how people understand the territory, to show us what's going on. That was really useful because through that we found out about people that had studies in geography and geology that we didn't know, right? And it was really helpful. We've done also this thing, this big basket is made out of a particular kind of plant from the region, using traditional weaving techniques. And what we did with this, or what we wanted to do with this, was to sort of try and figure out a way how to protect the land from landslides, you know. But Colombia is not a rich country. The government is not going to build big barriers like they build in other countries, right? So Switzerland is pretty good at this, right? But we don't have the resources. So we had to learn what sort of knowledge was available in the region, what plants were available in the region, how to use that to design this in collaboration with the plants and the people. And there's been some success. This was, so the methodology was a participatory design methodology that I designed with a colleague. But this was an engineering problem. So Miguel, the one that went to TU Delft, developed the mathematical models to try and understand if this could work and it does, right? And we have evidence that these could be a really powerful approach to sort of try and stop landslides from messing up with people's houses and whatnot. And we have also, in the same vein of this, we have also explored different ways to grow plants in steep areas of the region to try and stop the landslides. So we used local seeds, local soil, local materials, local knowledge to solve the problems that we identified. We're also going to publish a graphic novel in a couple of months, in which we tell the story of the volcano, right? Through the eyes of this character. She was a student. She didn't want to study. Her teacher told her, oh, well, you're going to fail the tests. But if you learn and tell the story about the volcano, then you will pass. And so that's the story of the graphic novel. There's a fictional side to it, but yeah, it's just too long. But anyway, so we have that. And this was really beautiful because this graphic novel was conceived as a mechanism to connect with the local schools. So early child education. So we've engaged the local institution. We've had discussions about how these could be brought to the curriculum in the school. And it is written in Spanish, yeah? But there's a certain kind of slang that's native to Nariño. So we had a couple of people look at the scripts, correct, and amend the scripts to resonate with the local sort of approach to saying things. So, for example, frío means cold, right? Está frío, it's getting cold. But then in Nariño, they would just say achichay. We didn't know. And now it's part of the graphic novel. And we also have a mini dictionary there of terms. And this is a dual sort of approach. We have, with this graphic novel, we have a dual strategy. So we have the graphic novel and we have an activity booklet, right? So the graphic novel has colors. The booklet has many activities. And so the graphic novel tells the story of the volcano, earth, blah, blah, blah. And, you would learn a lot of things. And then the booklet would call the graphic novel. So if you want to know about this, then you read that, right? But they're separated. At the beginning, we wanted to have a single book. But then we thought, hey, if we have an activity booklet at the end, then the graphic novel would only be usable once. And it would be impossible to replicate. So we decided to split that, and that's why we have this in black and white, so people can make photocopies of it, and they can use it many times. And the graphic novel can stay in the library of the school, in the different homes, and whatnot, so people could access the story. And then we have also engaged a really interesting cultural house in the little town. And they're really super keen to have this because they work with kids, early child education outside formal education, which I think is great. And that's why we're looking at knowledges otherwise, because they exist within and outside formal education. So what we've done that's really important is we have managed to, it sounds really pretentious, I don't want it to sound like that, because we don't really know yet. We don't know if the approach is going to be successful or not. But then again, that's why I asked the question about failure the other day, right? Because it is about how do we deal with failing at things. So we think it's great, and we've done interesting things, but there's plenty of things to do. And the other thing that we have explored is how to do it. It's been super challenging. We've had internal fights, relationships have shattered, horrible things that I don't want to get into right now have taken place. But it is not about us, right? It is about the team. It is about the plants. It is about the mountain. It is about the river. It is about the people. But it's also about us. So we have a dish in Colombia and we call it sancocho, which is similar to what you would do with a curry. So let's talk about curry. You chuck a bunch of things in one pot and then you have your curry. It's the same thing with the sancocho. Huh? Sure, not that easy, right? It is not. But the gist of it is like that, right? You chuck it in, whatever you do, it takes you 24 hours or 2. The issue is to mix and blend, and then you get from all these independent flavors and things, these new special food that nurtures. So what I'm trying to get at is that what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand that we are one, that we are all, that we together, and that we must see each other. It is a must. We need to acknowledge, not acknowledgement in colonial terms, right? Not acknowledging, oh, you're the object of study. It's like, we study together. Yeah? So, with this work, we've had to learn how to listen beyond our means. And what that means is that we are limited as humans. Our perception is limited. We only see a certain part of the spectrum. We only listen a certain part of the spectrum. We only feel a certain part of the spectrum. How could we listen to plants? How could we listen to the volcano? How could we listen to the clouds, the birds? And how could we grow? So it says it right there, no? We're all connected beyond what's visible. And the pandemic was, it made it truly visible, right? If you get sick here, I might get sick across the pond, across the Pacific Ocean. We don't speak the same language. We don't feel the same things. We don't eat the same things. Yet we're one. And so this idea of the mycorrhiza, and now that we're talking about networking, is really interesting to try and understand this. Does anyone know what a mycorrhiza is? No? Excellent. Excellent. Well, the mycorrhiza is called the Internet of Plants. And it is a kind of fungus that exists in the soil that connects plants. So what happens is it acts as a connective tissue, but it also has a really interesting relationship with plants. So plants would, gather sun, blah, 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 and then you get sugar and all is great. But plants have a difficult time collecting minerals. And here's where the fungus go, I can do that, right? I can do that, You give me sugar, I give you minerals, and I connect you to your brother. There's been studies that have proven that when a tree has been attacked by a certain plague, another tree 100, 200 meters away reacts by producing enzymes that are toxic to that plague. How does that happen? I don't know. People are saying that mycorrhizas are the way, or are the mechanism that forests use to communicate with each other. I don't know if that's true. I'm not a biologist. I don't study fungus. But I think it's a beautiful metaphor to bring back to this. Because if we are one and we're all and we are together, then we're connected. The other thing that I would like to bring to this talk is this notion about field thinking. So field thinking was a notion developed by Falsborda, who was a Colombian anthropologist that was born in the Caribbean shores of the country, and then he moved back to Bogota, and then he lived in the US and blah, blah, blah. And then he realized that, the Western approach to understanding life is particular. And without judging the Western approach, what he realized was that, being rational was not the only way to engage the world, right? So people in Bogota would say, oh, costeños are lazy. So people from the shores, right? Costeños are lazy. But then Falsborda went, they're not lazy. They're just living in a different way. They have a different rhythm, right? They're not rational. They feel, and then they think, or they think, and then they feel. And I would add to that. So you could find it in the literature written in both ways. So contemporary participatory design people would use field thinking, which is a better translation from Spanish. And authors from the English-speaking world would use thinking feeling. I prefer that one, but they mean the same. So, it doesn't matter. So, my invitation here is let's feel, think, act together. And as a designer, that's what I do, right? Actions, little things, murals, graphic novels, solutions, but also thinking and feeling, and maybe not acting, right? Just staying there, staying with the trouble, as some people would say. All right, so let's feel, think, act together with the more than human. And that's why that raccoon is there, because I see you. Be naughty. Go through the trash and see what's interesting. So there's a list of things that I would like to say, or I would like to think that sort of condense the message of this talk, but there might be too many. So acknowledge that you don't know, first of all. Acknowledge your limitations and those of your team, and then expand yourself and the capacities of your team. So strive to expand your feelers like a snail, like identify which new feelers are needed. Work on collective intelligence, work around communities of practice, which is something that's been mentioned here before. Work on multi-directional capacity development. As academics and professionals and blah, 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 we think we have the last word. We don't. We don't. We just have one word. Try to understand the others and try to learn from that and develop your own capacities in connection to what you're learning. And with that, I would like to say, truly engage your team, all of it. Plants, fungi, fungus, whatever, trees, someone Someone would say I'm a hippie, I'm a tree lover, tree hugger is the word. But hey, maybe. So engage your team. But if this is too much, I would like you to take this away from this talk, right? Let's feel, think, act in a mycorrhizal way. Stay curious. The world is bigger than you think. Make sure you ask the name. Make sure you try and understand your team. How would you ask a tree their name? I don't know. But ask the tree. Maybe they have an answer. And connect. Any questions, comments? Yes.
Thank you. Okay, yes. Any question? Thank you, Leonardo. It was really fantastic. Bringing us all the way through your own adventures,
Yep.
and then volcanoes, and then the forest, fungus, and plants, and going back to feeling, thinking.
Yes.
Yes. We have a question.
I really appreciate you bring back the cosmology of indigenous, because this is the most important. We talk about participatory, isn't it? So actually, nature should be in the actor. Should be considered. What is the interest of nature? Are you following me? Because you
Yes.
look like, all right. Is everyone following me? Because I was like, my question I want to ask for like 1.5 hour. So, so it's beautiful. And also you talk about the position of, studying and seeing, but it really disturbed me somehow, the metaphor of this blending. I think it can be quite problematic in a way, like earlier talk about milkshake, because, we are talk about, a metaphor of melting pot. You and I, and our friend from Nigeria, we are all colonized. Like 3/4 of the countries are being colonized.
Yep.
You talk about acknowledgement. How about, the parts that we forgot to acknowledge? How about, the pain of resettlement in Borneo? I'm from Cebu. I'm from Fuzhou. So we Chinese, we travel very far away. I mean, that's my story. What I'm trying to say is, I think that because we need to talk about the past and the future, I think when we look about the future, perhaps we can really be honest and acknowledge the past. That's one of my comments. And my question is that how you talk about I see you, but what is I? What is you? What is our position? What is our relation? The intersectionality and gender ideologies, age and religion, how it's not as simple as that, and how in your practice how could you be more reflective about the I see you or letting you see me, because you talk about full serve and the alignment. And the second question, actually, I'm sorry, a bit messy here. The second question is, how do you listen to people who already lost their voice for centuries with all the oppressive system?
Sure. Yeah. Good questions. Thank you. Look, I only had 1 hour, right? Yes. Because I had the opportunity I wanted to give you the opportunity to see me, right? Maybe we can have a chat for 20 minutes in which you talk about yourself to me, and I would be happy to listen. Okay, so your questions are really interesting and powerful in a way that, let's start with colonization, right? So I've engaged the decolonial approach a number of times, and and this is my personal view, and it might be different to yours. I might not give you the answer that you want, but what I'm trying to get at is that I have also been colonized. My the Spanish, as I said, did a pretty good job at wiping out all the indigenous groups and languages in Colombia, right? So a few years back, 10 years ago, I found out that I have a direct line to one of the indigenous groups in the Bogota area, the Muiscas, right? And I don't speak their language. I don't know their epistemologies in a profound, deep way. But what I have tried to do is I have tried to engage that line, that bloodline, by saying, this is where part of my identity lies. Yes? So, and that's why I have these tattoos, right? So these are Muisca patterns, these are Muisca patterns. This is an endemic bird from Bogota. There's another endemic bird, there's an owl and there's a wolf, a fox rather than a wolf. And what I'm trying to get at is that I cannot save the world, I can only save myself. And at some point, and this is interesting because when you do a PhD, you try to save the world, and then they tell you, you're not saving the world, you're not gonna get a Nobel Prize, you're just pushing knowledge a little bit, right? So I have tried to gather all these things and try and understand what they mean to me and what they mean to my life and what they mean in terms of how I engage the world. And the question you asked about what's I and what's me, well, that's a philosophical question that we might need to engage after this session because it's a long one. But this is what I have, right? This is my faulty body. It is broken. It hurts. I've had many surgeries, yet still struggling. In the end, the other question that you asked that was really powerful was, how do you listen to people that have lost their voice? Well, you listen to them, right? And you try and see how to, in a participatory manner, build this new world and this new vision. Because what can you do about the past? You can just look at it and do things. And there's a particular view about time in some indigenous communities in Colombia. I don't know how it works here, but some indigenous communities say that we do not walk forwards because the past is the thing that we see. The future is behind you because you cannot see it, right? So how do I decolonize? You're saying people do not have a voice. They do. They do have a voice. You have to listen, really. You have to engage your ears, your eyes, your body to try and understand how this thing blends together and what it means to you and the rest. So this goes back to you. So you want to answer those questions. Let's answer them together.
No, it's really important actually. And before going even to the others, can we reflect on ourselves?
Sure.
Who am I? Like that's a very important
Yeah.
question. I think, and then how I listen. Can I listen? And the expression from the other side. It's seeing or listening with words or visual. Different way of the expression.
Sure.
And one more quick question we can take, and then after that we are going for a tea break. But before that, we have 5 minutes for Rennie and Gary. Any more question? A quick one. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, Francia, thank you for bringing us to appreciate the beauty of the world through your eyes. living together as one human family and in one common home, that we can breathe the same air. And I thank you for that, and I accept you as who you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Leo. Thank you very much. So Leo will be around, yes.
Yes.
And we have a very nice walk today, like after the, before the conference dinner, 15 minutes. You can catch up with him walking around.
Sure.
Thank
Happy
you,
to
Leo.
chat.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.